Are you a great leader? Listen, we all have room for growth. My guest, Tinna Jackson, and I will talk about that today. Welcome to How to Get What You Want. This podcast is for driven women ready to claim their goals and navigate their careers with clarity and confidence. Join me as we explore real stories, tools, and strategies to help you steer your career exactly where you want to go. Let's get started on helping you get what you want. Hey, welcome. I'm Susie. I'm so glad that you made the choice to be here today because I have a special guest, a new friend that we're going to get to know together. Tinna, welcome. I'm so glad to get to know you today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Tell us about you. Give us some background. What would you want us to know about you in relation to the conversation today?
My name's Tinna Jackson. I am president and CEO of Jackson Consulting Group. We're based in Washington, D.C., an executive coaching and management consulting firm. So again, born and raised in D.C. There's not many of us that were born and raised here, so that's really interesting. But the majority of my career has been spent in national politics. I worked on Capitol Hill in the U.S. Senate for over 10 years and then went to a political committee. I've also done some social justice nonprofit work. And then, I stepped into my business full time. I got to a point, actually I turned 50 this year. So just FYI, I just turned 50 this year.
Welcome.
Thank you. But no, I got to a point in my career where I had to ask myself, what are you doing? I feel like something happens after the age of 40 where we have to think about, what are you doing? What are you contributing? Are you actually able to utilize all of the talents that you have? And does it make sense to try to offer that to the organization that you're currently in? Because it could be threatening. As women, I think we develop so many skills over the years, right? We actually become really, really good at multiple things. However, your role in an organization could just be limited to like one or two things, right? And so for me, I had to ask myself, do I still fit here? I made the decision to step into my business full time because I realized, especially in politics, it's difficult to redefine your fit. And for me, redefining that fit was going into my business full time and trying to make an impact with leaders who really need strategy and recognizes my value.
So are you saying that we as corporate employees or wherever we are, we define ourselves by our role and responsibility, and we need to broaden that and really think about what other strengths do we bring or what do we want to develop?
Absolutely. I think at times we do. I think over the years, we get more consumed and more concerned about the title, becoming VP of this or senior director of that or CEO or COO. And a lot of times that becomes your identity if you allow it, if that's what you're going for. And I think it's important to, at some point, recognize what your natural talents are. Look at your strengths and ask yourself, am I happy? Am I happy in this job? Maybe you're not because you're not utilizing your talents. There's one thing to develop skill because it may be a part of what the role requires. You have to learn certain things to fulfill that job description. But our natural talents, I think that's where our happiness and our purpose comes into play.
How would you say if somebody's listening to this and they're like, how do I take a step back and how do I really think about what are my natural talents? What are my strengths beyond what I do for a living?
Well, first, I would say don't overthink it because you know what you're good at. You have to not listen to those negative voices that tells you otherwise.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I'll use myself, for example. Initially, I didn't want to go into politics. My skill set was hairstyling and makeup. I went to cosmetology school. I've always been a creative person. Okay. I was going to do runway work. I was going to do New York Fashion Week, and I was going to work with celebrities.
How fun.
Sure. Sure.
And you got into politics. I can't wait to see where this bridge happened.
The thing is as I was doing that, I had a full-time job during the day, and I was doing cosmetology and the hairstyling stuff at night. And so, I mean, this is what I'm talking about. Like when you're developing other skills over time. I ended up working with a law firm. They liked my work ethic so much so that I ended up working for 7 partners. Well, one of those partners pulled me aside and say, "Hey, you want to come to the Hill with me? This guy that I used to work for is about to be elected to the Senate." Asked me 5 times. I was like, "No, no, no." And then the 5th time I was like, not many people get this opportunity. And
Yeah.
I'm getting this opportunity because someone recognized that I was good at something, having nothing to do with the hairstyling piece, right? Because
Yeah.
they didn't know, but they saw something else in me. And I was like, I need to honor what this person sees in me and, just give it a shot. And 10 years later, I was in the Senate for 10 and a half years.
That's so interesting. You know what makes me think of is Gallup talks about clues to talent and
Yes.
clues to what those are. And so like one of
Yes.
those clues that you just identified is what do people say you're really good at? And pay attention to that. And that it's not just to make you feel good about it, but what are they saying that you're really good at? Sometimes we don't notice those things. And another one is what do you do when that makes time disappear? Or what do
Right.
you go to first on your to-do list? Like what are those things? I like that idea of paying attention to what makes you unique because we're all uniquely who we are. So what
Absolutely.
are those clues to what that is for you?
In working with my clients, I ask them to make sure they are focusing on the strengths of their team. I'm also a Gallup certified strengths
Oh,
coach as well.
nice.
I see a lot of leaders getting upset with certain team members because they're not good at something.
Yeah.
Well, if you know they're not good at that, they're not going to succeed. Put them in another role where they can succeed. It's
Yeah.
not difficult. Just
Yeah.
make the call. You are the boss. If you
Yeah.
recognize that someone is not good at managing projects, but they're good at managing people, maybe you move them into a management role where they actually have an opportunity to build rapport and help train staff so that they can be the project managers.
Yeah.
It's simple to me, but it's quite hard getting others to recognize that.
Yeah, it's almost like they need to go, what is frustrating me about this person or what they're doing? And then it's on them to, like you said, I'm reiterating what you said, to go, oh, I need to put them, I need to shift them, I need to put them on in the right seat on the bus. But then also, I feel like we can see the potential in others as well.
Right.
So then
Right.
how do you also push them? That's
Right.
where the growth happens, is not put them in something that they're not good at, put them in
Right.
something that they're really good at, and then give them the opportunities to really hone that skill.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll tell you this. This is an interesting twist. In many organizations, there are people that are brought on by whoever the supervisor or leader is that might have a personal connection to that person, right? Some people are
Yeah.
brought in, personally by the boss because of trust or because of prior relationship. What's really difficult for an organization and for that boss is when they bring in a person to do a specific job and they realize they made a mistake and can't do that job. And so instead of making the tough call and saying, "Hey, I know, I hired you under this pretense, but we're recognizing that you're not really good at this. Let's move you somewhere else." A lot of people don't do that. They're afraid to make that call
Yeah.
because they don't want to be embarrassed
Yeah.
that maybe they made not necessarily a mistake, but they were judging based on past experience and they didn't even bother to ask the questions that requires them to perform in the way that they need to perform for this particular job today. And I see a lot of leaders like stuck. They end up being stuck with people and resenting the very people that they brought on because of their personal
Yeah.
relationship.
Totally. Oh my gosh. I have a perfect example, but you're going to think I made it up because it fits so perfectly. There was a
Right.
chief HR officer that brought in somebody that he knew from a previous role, and it ended up being a horrible fit. People were complaining about him. He wasn't being successful. He was feeling really, down.
Yeah.
And this leader actually said, I can't do anything about it because I'm the one that made the decision and I don't want to look bad. It's like, what are you doing to the people in the culture and to that person by not shifting them into the right place. Get over your ego.
Exactly. And the thing is it's okay to say that you misjudged.
Yes.
You made a judgment call based on the information you had at the time.
Yeah.
And it's okay to say, you know, I screwed this up. Whatever words you need to say to yourself to reframe your decision, do it. But you still need to make you still need to make the change.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you start losing really good people.
And you know this too, because Gallup talks about this too. When you don't have a good fit in an organization and they're like kind of pulling down the team, that affects everybody's performance. And
Absolutely.
that brings down engagement, and it everybody's kind of waiting for you to make a decision. So when you delay those tough decisions based on your ego or your reluctance to, handle it, you're affecting the entire part of the organization and
Right.
beyond. When you see a leader that has that barrier for them where they cannot see that, how do you enlighten them? Sometimes it's hard for people to get through. Like, if people aren't self-aware, like, how do you break through to people that need to see something that's right in front of them, but I cannot shine a light on it?
I think the most important thing is to remind them that it's not about you. It is not about you. You might be the leader of this organization, but you cannot lead if there's no one to lead. If you don't have an organization to lead, if you don't have people to lead. And so, given that it is a fact that you cannot do anything alone, you have to have a team to support you and to move your vision and your mission forward. And so, having said that, if you could just take a step back, receive the feedback, not get offended, and have the confidence in yourself and the trust in yourself to say, I need to make this change, and make the change. Now, if maybe the person no longer fits in your organization, maybe you create something that is specific to that person's talents. And that's okay too. So long as you are not necessarily setting precedent, right? Because then you get into that's a whole other issue. Because if someone sees that, they'll say, well, I want you to create a position for me too,
Yeah.
you know? So yeah, I think it's more important to just remind people that it's really not about you.
Our ego has to get us there. Like, as leaders, sometimes it's our ego that gets us there. But the challenge is, as you get up in the organization, is letting that ego go. Because as a leader, that's so important to not put yourself first. And self-awareness goes down as you go up in the organization because, people learn what feedback you'll take or how you'll see things or what ramifications there are to speak up or not. And we're all in a time of shifting. Like, there's always room for growth. And so we all have to understand that there's always those opportunities. So you need to be able to be open to that.
Definitely.
I'd love to understand, now that you work with corporate executives and, there's workplace politics, corporate politics, influence, impact, all of those things. When you look back at your experience in, I would say, to me, real politics, what are the differences or what are the similarities of working within organizations for somebody like me who has never been in any part of politics in my professional career?
I mean, honestly, there's not much difference. I think if I had to identify one difference, it's probably the level of, and I don't want to say work ethic. I think in politics, everything is urgent. There's a sense of urgency that I think other organizations may not have to worry about. Politics is focused on a 24-hour news cycle, right? Something had happened at 3 a.m. and if you're not up, you miss an opportunity. You miss an opportunity to respond. You miss an opportunity to come up with a game plan, to engage, and so forth. I do think that in some areas of, even in nonprofit world, And in corporate, that there might be some of that, maybe on the C level, right? Like if you're going through a merger or if you are, going through an organizational restructure, there are things that are going to keep you up at night. So it's having to deal with those kinds of urgent matters.
Yeah. Is it fair to say it's kind of like a scarcity mindset? There's so much focus on what is the shiny penny right now that everybody gets so focused on that you don't understand. You kind of lose the other priorities in the business that you're working on because everybody's focused on this one thing.
Yeah. I think there's some truth to that. I mean, but you also have to maintain focus on your day to day, like what your foundation is,
Yeah.
right? What brought you here? What are you doing on a daily basis? What is your organization? What do you do? What are you managing? What are your priorities? The funny thing is in politics and in anywhere, honestly, there are going to be competing priorities.
Yep.
That's why it's important to make sure you have a great senior team that can help you manage those priorities and take some things off of your plate if you're on C level.
Yeah. And getting really clear about those top priorities. It's really interesting. There's so much research around how our brains can't prioritize a huge long list of things. We really need to, we know what's most important. We know what's least important, but those things in the middle are the things that we spend so much time trying to figure out, and it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
it's so important for senior teams to that's why they say, focus on those three things so that everybody can align around that so that we're all kind of marching in the same direction.
Right. And there are a lot of organizations that are not marching in the same direction. It's very chaotic and people are having to figure out, getting the scramble down to a minimum, especially with so many changes with some decisions out of the federal government, people losing funding. Not only funding, some organizations are also losing relevancy as well, and that's tough.
It is, and pressure comes from a lot of different places. Corporate politics are affected by the interacting of people and that, but the pressure of the business, the pressure from the outside, from the industry, everything adds to those dynamics. And it's exactly what you're saying. It's like it doesn't matter where you work, whether you're in the public sector or the private sector. It's all about how do we help one another. I feel like we're in such a pressure time that we do have to have more empathy so that we can see one another, so that we can not just show up for ourselves and be our best self, but also for the people that are sitting on the other side of the table.
Absolutely. Look, emotional intelligence is so important. It's so key
Yeah.
today. It really is. You did mention self awareness earlier, but having emotional regulation is key too. Like you said, everything is pretty much, we're all in a pressure cooker environment in some way.
Yeah.
And if we can find a way to control how we respond, like it's okay to pause before you respond. It's okay to say, let me give this some thought and get back to you, before you lose it. That's really important. It's really important to with emotional regulation to maintain relationships as well.
Yeah. Okay, so when I think about our conversation and I think about my takeaways, I love what you said about really understanding your strengths. Pay attention to that and own it. Own what makes you uniquely you. The dynamics of an organization, it's everywhere. So pay attention to how you sit in that and how you participate in a positive way, and then really understand what you just said about your EQ is also situational awareness. Like, how can you show up for the people around you as well? How about you? What really sticks out for you?
Well, it's the emotional intelligence piece. Like I wrote a book called The Power Play Journal, and it's really based on emotional intelligence. And I've watched leaders over the years take on positions, not that they were not qualified for, but they stepped into roles where they were the subject matter expert. And they were not placed into these positions because they're great managers or they manage projects well or that they're actually, people. And I've seen people, bringing great numbers, but failed at motivating a team. They failed at, retaining staff. A lot of it because one, they were not self aware, and two, always getting frustrated and placing blame on the staff instead of taking responsibility for not providing clarity and direction. And so I wrote this book, hopefully, to close that gap, to give people 32 battle tested strategies to say, honestly, don't be an asshole. Like, this is not hard. How do you want to be treated? If you can think back on your career and think about who your best boss was, and then think about who your worst boss was and reconcile the two, right? You don't want to be the bad boss. You want to be the good boss. You want to be the person that everyone looks to for direction, for clarity, and for sound advice and for support. You don't want to be that guy or that gal who just is not accountable, not holding and not holding themselves accountable, and driving everyone crazy. I can't tell you how many people I've met over the years who have been in therapy because of bad bosses, because they did not know how to handle bosses who were just all over the place. On Tuesday, they're happy. On Wednesday, they're upset.
A person came to mind when you said that. If in my past, so who's the perfect person who should pick up your book and read it?
I would say there is no perfect person, because if you're leading your household, like if you're a mom and you're leading your household, some of this might be a confidence issue, asking for help. As women, I know we take on a lot because we can, but a lot of times we don't ask for support, right? So it could be the mom, it could be the dad, it could be, the manager at Chick-fil-A, right? It could be the person who is aspiring to lead, who wants to be promoted into a higher level position. But you got to think, you might want to be the boss, but when you step into that role, it's a completely different thing, especially if you are going from peer to manager. Those are the toughest roles to step into when you're going from peer to manager.
Yeah. So it's anybody that is in a leadership role when they have to impact others.
Absolutely.
Awesome. How do people find you, and how do they get your book?
Well, I am on LinkedIn, Tinna with 2 N's, Tinna Jackson. Also on Instagram at I am Tinna Jackson. And the book, The Power Play Journal, is on Amazon.
I love it. We'll also put all of that information in the show notes, so it's really easy for people to find you and to get your book. I'm so happy to have met you today, Tinna. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you. Thanks again for having me.
And thank you for being here today. If you want to go to negotiationlove.com and join my network and get my email every week, I'd love to have you there. And remember that negotiation isn't just a skill, it's a mindset. Until next time.